I thought I'd talk a little bit about editing tonight, and I know the last time I was on here talking about editing, I had my husband with me because he is an editor, and he is my editor, and he talks about editing, of course, from his point of view, from the editor's point of view, and I thought I would talk about editing from my point of view, which is from the director's point of view, which is a little bit different than from the editor's point of view. We each have a little bit different point of view, although we work very, very well together, probably because our style of working is very good. So an editor can make or break your performance, let me tell you. They really can. Yes, the director directs your performance on the set, and the cinematographer will shoot your performance, and the gaffer will light your performance, but it's the editor who chooses, in collaboration with the director, who chooses which takes wind up in the final film. So it can be your best takes, it cannot be your best takes, depending on the director and the producer, of course. It depends on what kind of an editor you get, because they're going to hire the editor. A good editor is going to make or break a project because they feel the rhythm of the scene, they know exactly when to cut. I'm thinking about this because I've been cutting one of my films all afternoon, so why else would I talk about this today? So, and a good editor does make or break the film, and I started with a rough cut, we're now honing it down. So when you're shopping for an editor, you have to understand a couple of things. First of all, you have to understand what kind of a director or producer you are. You have to know what your style is so you can find an editor who fits your style. Hello. So do you just want to hand the film over to somebody and say, you do a first cut and let me come and see it? Or do you want to micromanage their process cut by cut? I like a collaborative environment where my editor is making decisions along with me, but I have a director friend who is absolutely telling the editor every single edit. I mean, he's literally snapping his fingers when he wants the edit to happen. He goes along, he's watching the scene, and he goes, now. And the editor has to make the cut at that exact moment. The editor is really just a technician. There is no collaboration whatsoever. The editor probably hates it if they're the collaborative type of editor, but if they don't care, they don't care. And some editors are just cashing a check to be the one who cuts the film, and they don't mind. Now, my husband is not one of those editors. He does not like working with that director. He has worked with him before. He does not like it because he's a very collaborative editor. He knows a lot about what makes a scene work and what doesn't make a scene work. And so it's a little annoying to him when the director says, I want it right here. And he's thinking in his mind, you know, it really would be better if you let it breathe a little bit. And he said that once or twice to that director, and the director's like, you're not directing the film, I am. Just cut it where I tell you. I'm paying you to cut, just cut. And I was like, okay, geez, you know. So he just kept his mouth shut at that point forward and said to himself in his mind, well, I'm never working for this guy again. And took his little paycheck, and that was that. So you have to understand that there are different styles. Everybody has their own style, and if you're going to work well with your editor, you're going to want to have someone who fits your style. So if you find that your style is to absolutely micromanage the process to that degree, you're going to want to find someone who's like, yeah, sure, I don't care. Fine, you tell me exactly when to cut. I'm just going to be a technician to make the cuts for you. If, however, your style is to say, here, let me give you the footage, You put together a first cut, let me come in and I'll give you notes. And then we'll refine it together. That's a whole different kind of process. Now, if you're going to do that, I would say you're going to have a lot of trust in that editor, because they're going to like fashion the whole first cut of the movie. And I would say you want to see their work and make sure that the whole first cut of the movie they fashion is going to be anywhere close to what you had in your mind. That said, you don't just look at a reel. So here's what happens. If you look at somebody's reel, an editor's reel, all you're going to see is they can edit together a sizzle reel. You're not going to actually see that they can edit, A, in the style that you want them to edit, B, your project the way you want it edited. So here's what I would suggest. I would take your top 2 or 3 candidates and find a scene in your movie that has a really pivotal emotional moment that maybe is a little bit difficult in terms of it has a lot of different shots in it, a lot of different camera angles. Maybe it's going to involve changing some of the shots that you shot. So maybe it's going to involve reframing some of the shots, so that your editor is going to have to do some work reframing in their program, in their editing program. And give it to 3 different editors, your top 2 or 3 choices. Give the scene, the raw footage, to those 2 or 3 editors. Pay them, a couple $100 to $300 a piece. It's just one scene. And say, you edit this scene. Let me see what you do with it. This is what I would do if I didn't have my husband as an editor. I would go out and probably get recommendations, and I would get my top 2 or 3 choices, and I would take what I figured was the most difficult or pivotal scene in the movie, and I'd give them the raw footage and say, put this scene together. And I'd say, put this scene together the way you think it should play. And then I'd watch the scene the way they put it together. And whoever put it together the way that I felt was the strongest, that would be the editor that I hired. Because any scene can be edited any number of different ways. I don't necessarily micromanage the rough cut myself either. I like to sit in on it, but I allow my husband to kind of make most of those decisions himself. I do make some occasional notes. I do say, what about this? Or I was thinking of that. Does my husband he uses Final Cut Pro. He has used Avid, and what's that other one? Premiere. He has used Premiere, but his editing platform of choice at the moment is Final Cut Pro until they completely disavow the product. Which I know is coming, but he really loves it. It's so easy, and he's so fast with it that it is his platform of choice. He's been using it for, however long it's been out, he's been using it. I know before that he used a different platform before that, but I don't remember what it's called. So we're editing this scene, and it's going along, and he starts cutting into it. And it's like, wait a minute. Let the scene play. Play out the whole scene before you start cutting, because it's a very funny scene, and you might decide that you're going to start micro cutting it before. And he played the scene through, and he was like, yeah, we're going to let it sit just the way it is. You have to understand what your style is when you want to work with an editor, because you want to have a good collaborative working relationship with them so that you don't clash in the editing room. You want to make sure that the way that you work with your editor is fun for both of you. And the only way that's going to happen is if you interview them and you say, how was it like when you worked with your last director? What did you like about working with them? What didn't you like about working with them? What made the process fun? Were there any things about working with them that you didn't like? What's your style of working? Do you prefer the director to tell you what kind of cuts to make? Do you prefer the director let you decide? Do you like to talk about the way you're cutting the film as you go along? Do you want to do the first cut and then get notes? What's your preferred style of working so that you understand how they want to work with you? And if you know your style, then you know, hey, this is someone I want to work with, or this is somebody that may not work too well with me, given my style of working. And then you continue to search, you continue to look, because if they're not the style that is going to work well with your style, then you look for somebody who is, because there are plenty of editors in town, and there are plenty of good editors in town. So you just have to find someone whose style of working matches yours, and make sure that the work they do is also good, and then you've got a match. That's pretty much what I wanted to say about that.